Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States.
Welcome to Block 5 of the Discovery Funnel. In Block 5, we are going to discuss the how. This is the transition of everything we've learned and identified and the processes on how do we make it happen now, right? But before we get into all the action steps and the conversation pieces and the insights there, the how is creating the map. How do we identify the access points, and what do access points look like uniquely to these different things that you've discovered through the last 3 blocks? So we've talked about in Block 2, the why, the internal pieces. In Block 3, we discussed the what, the role that you would fit inside. And in Block 4, we talked through the who, which is the type in the company. So in stepping into these access points, we want to first discuss recruiters, right? And the special relationships that we can create with those, and then how to navigate this space. And so when it comes to a recruiter, it's always important to put yourself into their seat, right? You're going to put yourself into the seat of these access points that we talk about. And so what I want to go through first, Billy, is a little bit of the world of today, and perhaps what you think the right process is for today. And I think how everyone yells at you or tells you, like, this is how you do it, make a better resume, apply to more jobs.
Yeah.
It was just incredibly discouraging because no one gets back to you. I want to talk about that, and then we'll roll into these access points, and I think we'll start to build on the world of tomorrow, right? The discovery funnel. And so recruiters have a job, clearly, and specific KPIs from their managers. It says, Billy, you're a recruiter. I need you to fill 5 roles this month on most qualified candidates. And they need to translate the requirements of the position description or the spec or the rec, as it's referred to, into a resume in the application. And recruiters are not incentivized to help translate a military resume
Not at all.
into a civilian job. And if your resume or the process that you have when you get in line with all these other people is difficult, they pass. Because there are hundreds of applicants that go to these roles. And the recruiter, I remember reading somewhere that the average recruiter spends 7 seconds on a resume. And I got to say, I'm guilty of it for my time that I was in.
You would know.
Because I would look at it very quickly. If I recognized roles and titles, I would move it on. So as we go through these access points in the how piece of this block, this is the access points of the future, right? This is the access points that we want you to identify and learn and move through, because the access point of the recruiter is incredibly congested. Your background is not familiar with what they know, and it's not easy for them, right? You want to make it easy for your recruiter to be successful. Right?
They want to know that you're a win right off the bat.
Right off the bat, and it's hard to do when you're trying to translate military to civilian or law enforcement to civilian, because they have all these concepts about this. So that's how recruiters work. They're incentivized, and their KPIs are fill the role by this time and make the hiring managers have those specs completed. And either you're going to help them do that or you hinder it. And so we have found that typically applying to a role, throwing out resumes is not the most effective way of getting in.
I've actually never done it that way.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, I've never done that, this like old-fashioned way of doing it. All the things we'll talk about here in a second, that's the only way that I've ever
The new
applied
access,
for-
the useful,
the useful access points are really the only way
most
I've ever
useful
done
access points. I think as we translate from the most recognizable access point, the recruiter, right? Apply to jobs, talk to recruiters. They're not the right ones for you. And they weren't the right ones for me. That's not what I use. And it's what Billy and I have worked on, is finding effective access points and then working our way back to the open roles. So the first one that's an easy, effective access point, as we discuss those, is a military recruiter.
Specialty recruiter.
A specialty recruiter.
Yeah.
In enterprise organizations, large ones, commercial organizations, they will have programs that say, like, I want military individual to join our company. You'll see this with the Skill Bridge program, which we're big advocates of.
Huge.
I recommend for those that have the opportunity to take it. But the Skill Bridge program is the DoD making it easier for companies to get military talent, because they get it for free, because the DoD is still paying tab on that person. And so as you jump on LinkedIn, jump online, these different places, take the time to go and search specifically the company, industry, whatever you already have, those colors, and then apply the specialty recruiter aspect to the search bar. And so you had shared that you didn't have experience with a military recruiter.
I
Is
did
that
not
right?
use one, no.
No?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, I had the opportunity to work with a military recruiter at a few places.
Mhm.
Uber, Accenture, Deloitte, right? Those are two of the big, well, two very large consulting firms and a technology company. And all of those recruiters had military experience.
Yep.
And now what they were incentivized to do was find military folks and plug them into the company. So I was trying to help them to do that. And they would also then influence in the background, talking to the hiring managers and the others to say, hey, this guy does X, Y, and Z and has the credibility because of A, B, and C in the background. So the first access point that is useful is a specialty recruiter. And just before we close out that, this specialty recruiter thing can extend from, I've seen, so there's diversity recruiters for diverse candidates. There's been neurodiverse recruiters, which is for folks with neurodiversity conditions. I've seen also returning to the workforce recruiters. And so these are folks that are designed to be recruiters. Often this is targeted for returning mothers, caregivers that have been out of the workforce for a while and want to get back into the workforce. There's programs for that. There's programs for military spouses and recruiters for that. I mean, you sort of think of the classifications that a person could have. Sometimes there's recruiters for those. Specialty recruiter is the first effective or more effective point that you can access opportunities in organizations.
The best way to find these people are A, do a Google search to see if the company that you're interested in has these different programs. And again, a big benefit of larger companies like we talked about in the last block is they will most likely have these things. Smaller companies, not so much. Not because they don't care, just because they don't have the time and the resources to do so. And then the next best place to find people like this is LinkedIn, which really is the social networking site you want to be on for jobs and all those kinds of things. But those are the two ways that you find these types of individuals if this is an access point you want to explore.
So this next one, Billy, if you walk us through the next access point that we've identified.
So mentors are a phenomenal, not just access point. I would honestly say that a mentor does, and you probably know this, if you're coming out of the military, you've had at least one. A mentor is a wonderful mountain of information that you can access at any point in time, and they're really there to provide guidance and advice and opinions on a variety of different subjects. And they can also provide access into companies or to roles that you're interested in, either because they work for that company or they know someone who works for that company. But that's not the only reason why we recommend that you get one. I highly recommend during your transition process, you try and find a couple of these people. And there's a couple of different categories that we want to talk about for mentors. The first one is an industry mentor. So for myself, I have a couple of industry mentors, and these are all Chief Information Security Officers. So CISO. So it is the security person in the C-suite of a board on a company, and they have a just vast amount of information on the area that I work in and can provide a ton of advice on the company I work for, the space, and everything else. And so that's my industry mentor. That's what you want, somebody who's in the industry that you want to work in so that they can provide you that mature opinion on the industry itself, because you probably don't know that much about it. The next one is a company mentor. And there's two, this is split into two categories, but first, a company mentor is just someone who's in the company that you're interested in. And these people can be one of two categories. First is champions. So these are just people that are going to be your champion in the process, and they are going to really help give you access and insight into the company itself. But then the second type of mentor is going to be the decision makers. And these might be people who are actually in the hiring process and have the ability to affect that decision as you go to apply for those kinds of jobs. And so, going back to our original access point, specialty recruiters, military global affairs, which is what it's called at Amazon. If you have a mentor who's in military global affairs, they're going to be able to possibly affect that hiring process more than someone who is not. And so those are two different types of mentors within a company that you're interested in that you can access. And then finally, I don't have one of these next types of mentors because I move around a lot, but do you have any geographic mentors?
So I'm in Dallas, Texas today, and certainly, right, it's taken me a longer period of time to work into some of the economic organizations here in town, but identifying perhaps if you want to, like, I want to move to Atlanta, you can find individuals who are influential in that area, in that space, to talk to, understand opportunities, begin to network with, and have that access point, right? And they'll help you to introduce you to more people in the community. In the same way you'd have a mentor in a company to be introduced to more people in the company, you can do this geographically or regionally on where you want to move.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to learn about areas. And in the same way you could do a call ahead if you're going to a new base, you'd say, like, I want to learn about where's the best place to live on that base. Talk to someone who's been there. Just because you're out of the military now, that doesn't go away. I think that a lot of times we forget about that, though. As you're about to move, call ahead. Find someone who has a similar background to you and have them to be your mentor when it comes to a geographic place. And, and Billy, that does roll into the next piece here, this like life mentor thing. I think often veterans can think of mentors as something you sign up for, right? Because your mentor often is given to you by, for example, I was a platoon commander. My mentor was my company commander. There wasn't really someone outside of my chain of command that was my mentor. It was like told, like, this is the person that's going to help you to be more successful. Well, out here in the civilian world, these people don't really gain much from being your mentor, right? So there's a lot of energy that you have to pour into this to do that. And you need to find someone who's willing to help and have a lot of, you say, like, synergy with you to do that. It's not just like, hey, Billy, will you be my mentor? Please? Yes. Nice. You're my mentor. Like, unfortunately, it's not that easy. Finding someone that you build a relationship with. And that's this life mentor thing. Look, as you go through the industry, company, the champions, decision makers, the geographic ones, some of them will carry and they'll develop into being more of a life mentor.
Certainly.
And that's just how you can classify them. And you'll recognize on your own self that they'll like level up or like graduate into being someone like, I'm going to stay in touch with you for a while. And so those are great access points into companies. We've gone through the specialty recruiters, developing mentors that have influence in these different ways. And the next one that's really interesting and in some ways a like straight avenue in
Certainly can be.
would be programs, specific programs. And so programs have a lot of variety to them. And so some major categories that you can search and look for are internships. Now, as an exiting military person, if you have some college education, I feel like that qualifies as an internship. And it's something to like try out and pressure test, because you then, as a veteran, are a diversity candidate, right? Veterans are considered a diversity space for recruiters because you make up less than 1% of the population. So internships, check it out if you have some college education. If you don't, I'd say go for it anyways, because you miss every shot you don't take. Next is veteran programs. Big organizations, medium organizations, sometimes small organizations have veterans programs. Take the time to go veteran program company A, military program company A. Like, the companies don't work together. There's not a consolidated list. Companies aren't incentivized to work together to give you this big handout of great opportunities.
And one thing to highlight is when we say veteran programs, kind of like military recruiters, there's a wide variety of specialty programs that are designed to bring in different types of categories of people. And so just because you're not in the military doesn't mean there is not a program for a company for the role that you're interested in. And take the time to do the research, because there might be.
Hey, if you're law enforcement, like go for the military thing
Hmm.
and just tell them that you've been like a CONUS military member. I know it sounds it's a stretch, but I'd go because the
Hmm.
worst that happens is they say no, and
Yeah.
then I think that's kind of foolish on their behalf. The veteran programs go after them. They're all titled different. It's a pain in the butt to figure out what they are, but then also they're designed by function. So we've already gone over those things. The other programs that you can step into if you're interested in going to get further education are college, right? College or trade school. So trade school will have fantastic programs for transitioning military vets. Colleges will have those. We hear all about the GI Bill and the post 9/11 education bill, so those are fantastic. But you can also work for special grants and
Scholarships.
scholarships
Yeah.
to get to those, and those are veteran focused. Graduate degrees for those that already have an undergraduate degree and want
Hmm.
to go get a graduate degree, they'll have special military programs. So
Yeah.
check those out. Let's see here, and then also geographic. Sometimes there are cities or regions that will have military initiatives to help move more people there or to funnel talent into geographic areas as they try to develop those spaces. You see this often in like commercial development, urban development for living and things like that. And sometimes there's military ones that say like they're trying to attract talent to locations. So these are the next special access points in getting into opportunities that are interesting for you and to learn about them, right?
Hmm.
We have to get in to learn about like what's actually happening. And then like do you actually like it? Right? Because it's those 1,000 cups of coffee or the essence of the discovery funnel is figuring out, is trying to understand yourself because that's always a work in progress.
And really, the more programs like this that you can leverage, the better, because you can get more irons in the fire, which is fantastic. You can get more exposure to more things. And even if you don't like that specific program or that specific role that you might be slotted into, at the very least, you can speak more fluently in that space. You have personal experience, so you can kind of talk to it, and all of it is beneficial. So be very cautious on exploring just one of these
Oh
programs
yeah, yeah. Do as
because
many as you can.
a lot of these can pan out, and some of them might not be what you want, and some of them might be great.
And look, there's no limit on where these connections can come from. As we look at the last special access point inside of this block, it's our network, right? The grander network connections.
Grander network.
And what's really interesting, we're gonna have to plug this in the notes, is this video of Steve Jobs talking about how he was able to get so much by just asking for help. And what I tell transitioning veterans is that when you are getting out of the military, you got to think of yourself as being the second highest rank or like the highest rank in the military that you could be. Everyone will take your call because most people want to help. And so when you think about these mentors and programs and all the rest, and as we step into this network connections piece, people want to help veterans. And so if you want to make a connection and see if the mentor, like a CEO or a president, let's say it's the owner of a electrician company, you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about becoming an electrician. I'm a whatever rank in the Navy. Would you mind connecting for a little bit? I'll be shocked if they say no. All right, so don't feel limited if you've only spent 3 years in the military, 6 months in the military, 20 years in the military. Go for it. But network connections is a really important piece here. And Billy, walk us through your thoughts on this aspect of special access points.
I would say it's probably going to be the thing that results in the most prospects for jobs. And it's also the one that you want to pursue the most aggressively. And the reason being is mentors, they deserve a lot of attention. And so you really can't have a ton of them.
What's a
And
good quantity?
for mentors,
Yeah.
I think it depends on an individual's bandwidth, but I would say no more than one or two per area. So like an industry, a company, and then like a geographic slash life might be a good place to start. And then you kind of go from there. But don't get too many at once because the last thing you want to do is snub someone who's taking the time to help you.
Yeah.
Programs as well. some of these are especially these vet programs, they're long. Like hiring our heroes is long. Like that's a 16, I think like 16 or 14 or 12-week process. And you can't really do much else while you're doing it. So it's hard to explore many options at once. Expanding your network allows you to fish for opportunities at an insane rate. And every time you make a new network connection, you're just expanding that net further and further and further. For me, it's what got me my job. I met a guy on a veteran networking site called Veterati, and he really enjoyed talking to me. We talked like twice, and then one day he was like, "Hey, I just referred you to a job at Amazon," because he had just gotten hired at Amazon, and that ended up being the job that I am now working in. Didn't even know the job existed, was not tracking it, and so because I had taken the time to cast the net, I was able to find jobs via my network, which is absolutely amazing. And it also highlights another piece, which is job referrals. As you build this network, a lot of companies and a lot of companies incentivize employees going out and essentially recruiting people by referral bonuses. And so these people, if they like you and they think that you're a good fit, there's a high chance that you can ask for a referral, or they might just refer you to a job if you tell them what you're interested in, because they get kickback. And also, if they think that you're a good person, then they're adding a good person to the company, which is always great. And then the last piece that I'm going to highlight is the scale that you want to be looking at, because when people think a professional network, especially coming out of the military, no one really knows what that means. So to give you my version, which I think was honestly probably too little, like I got lucky. I had 11 months-ish between when I found out I was getting out of the military and when I got my job at Amazon. In that time, I had talked to about 530 some odd people, and I think it's like 538. And the reason I know that is because I had an Excel sheet that I used to track every conversation that I had, the person, the company they worked for, the day that I talked to him, what we talked about, did I want to follow up with them, when should I follow up with them, and what were the notes that I wanted to bring up for that follow-up conversation if I was going to have it. And so it was very detailed, and I don't think I cast a wide enough net. And if I wouldn't have talked to a few select people by chance, I don't think I would have ended up in the spot that I'm at, which I'm very happy. So expand this network as far as you can. Very important. But
because the best
yeah,
metaphor here, it's a net.
yeah,
It's a net. And you want more people to know who you are, what you can provide, and you want people to know what you're interested in. Because then what's going to happen, just like what happened with you, is when something comes up, they're going to go, I know a guy. I remember someone that I talked to that's interested in this. And so think of the network as your net, right? That you're growing and growing this net, and it has to stay strong so that can occur in conversation you had in the past, and that's the portion of the tracker.
Again, I believe that it's probably going to be your most useful and effective tool because it's also the most multifaceted. Like you can get so much different information from your professional network because it's just a giant pool of people, which is great.
It can work when you're asleep, right? It's one of those things that if you put in the proper energy to it and gain momentum, the concept of the flywheel, right? It really gets spinning. It will start working when you're not working.
And before we wrap this specific section up, there's just two pieces that I want to highlight here in terms of mentality, especially so once you've gotten to this how piece, you've taken the time to really understand yourself, you know what kinds of jobs you want to do, you know who you want to do that job for. Now you're just trying to figure out how you're going to get access to that specific job. The number one piece here is be persistent. This is something that takes time, and if you're getting out of the military where you've always been handed your next job, just understand that this process, you might get lucky, and that's great. It might be the first job, you apply, you get it, that's fantastic. But just be persistent and definitely trust this process and continue to build that net and explore as many opportunities as possible. And then the next piece here is be grateful. To access any of these access points requires you to interact with some human being that's just another person doing their job and they want to help. But that does not mean that you are fully deserving of not deserving of their help, but don't take it for granted. Yeah, don't be entitled, don't take it for granted. Treat these people with respect. They're taking the time to help you. And always be mindful of that because they don't have to. None of them have to take your call. And so treat everybody who does decide to take your call with the utmost respect, and it will certainly come back to reward you, I'm sure.
Gratitude goes a long ways.
It does.
Respectfulness. And so we've just discussed all the access points, right? These are the ways in the world of the discovery funnel, the world of tomorrow that we invite you to join because we see it as more effective than writing resumes, applying to jobs, and hoping something comes back. So build the net of your network through these different access points to find a successful way in discovering what you want to do next.